We entered December with baseball disputes, real basketball games, college basketball, and of course the bowl schedule ahead, and the Ravens entertaining the Miami Dolphins this week. But many of you know my heart is red on many weeknights following all things Capitals. And if you're a Caps fan, you know this guy's voice along with Craig Lachlan, the Locker, I should say, making up the play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals. He is Joe Beninati. Joe B back with us. You can follow his journey out on Twitter, and thousands do at Joe B PXP. Also did a little Big Ten football, but it's hockey season, Joe, right? I mean, it's time to drop the puck and get after it. Kind of a choppy effort for the Caps so far, but certainly not bad where they've been.
No, I won't call them bad. Nestor, it's good to hear your voice. I'm amazed that a quarter of the season is gone already.
It's crazy.
It just seems like we were breaking training camp 24 hours ago. And then, bang, Washington has 21 games in the books, and folks are going to look at that record and see 13-6-2 and go, that's pretty solid. Some Caps fans are going to go, why aren't you 20-1 like you were last year, or some degree, shape, or form? You can't have it both ways. You know, a lot of Caps fans were like, oh, who cares about regular season and President's Trophy and Metro Champs, and you got to win a cup. And then there's the others who are going to sit there and go, well, why are you not 20-1? Why are you 13-6-2? I think in the back recesses of their mind, maybe, Nestor, the Caps realized they played so hard for so long last season and ultimately didn't get rewarded. Maybe there's a little something in the dark recesses of the mind that says, let's dial it back a little bit so that we have a bit more for when it matters most.
Well, and in this case, you dial it back because guys get injured, right? I mean, things happen anyway through the natural course of the season. I mean, thankfully, Backstrom, Ovechkin, Johansson, they've all been fine. Kuznetsov's been fine. Maybe not on the ice, but certainly physically. Now you lose TJ Oshie for a couple of games, and, I think that showed up in Toronto on Saturday night, and I think it'll show up for as long as he's not out there. I know the hope is to get him back this week.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
Whenever I hear a recipe of week to week, I get concerned about that. And TJ's injury was such that, when we saw it go down against Detroit, an open ice hit against Riley Sheahan in a violent collision, in my mind, from shoulder to chest, shoulder to head. TJ is amazing, Nestor. He's not the biggest man. When you see him in person, he's a normal-sized human being. He's 5'11", maybe 195 pounds, but he plays like he's 260. He's not afraid whatsoever to throw his weight around, and he does so violently, and that has caught up to him from time to time. Thankfully, not so much here in Washington, but it had caught up to him from time to time in the past, especially in St. Louis. And I thought, to be quite honest, he was the Caps' best player in the first 4 weeks of the season. I don't think it was close. And that's not to say that Ovechkin and Backstrom and Holtby were horrible by any stretch. They weren't. But TJ was playing extremely well. And now you've lost him for the last 4 outings. And again, I don't want to be the one who's sitting here and just lumping excuse after excuse after excuse as for why they're not 20-1. But one excuse that I will offer is sometimes the schedule has been ruthless. And you're in another stretch here where you're going to go 3 or 4 days off, then you're going to play 3 games in 5 days. You take 2 days off, and you go 3-4. And 3-4, you're referring to the Toronto game. It was 3-4 around the holiday. And no, they didn't get into Toronto super late like they did one instance to Raleigh where they got in at 4 in the morning and got their doors blown off in the day game against the Hurricanes. But they didn't have it against Toronto. They weren't the same club that we've seen of late. And that's going to happen, and I just think the schedule gets credit for some of those.
Well, and then you go player by player and say who's playing well, who could you expect more out of, who's been injured, who fits the system. Kuznetsov is the guy that's going to get all the pressure here, right? And certainly with the contracts for him and Burakovsky, amongst others, there was more expected through the first 21 games. You would like to think over the next 60 games, Kuznetsov's going to score more than 3 goals every 20 games. Same thing with Burakovsky. There is more expected of those two guys, and there's a shadow circling those guys to say, why aren't they playing better?
There's concern where Kuznetsov lies because really go back, Nestor, to the last, 20, 25 games of the regular season last year and a disappointing playoff run for Yevgeny in terms of production. And then this first quarter of the season, this is a trend. And yes, is he being defended a bit differently? Does he get a lot more concern? Is he placed at the top of a scouting report now, whereas he might not have been early last season? Absolutely. But I think more than anything, once the game gets more difficult and the grind is placed harder upon Yevgeny, he tends to get into his own head a little bit, and he gets down when the results don't come. And I don't know if he's feeling the pressure of this being a contract year. Obviously, there were a lot of people who sat there and said, boy, if Kuznetsov leads your team again in scoring, you're going to have to break the bank to keep him around. And there's a lot of changes to come with respect to free agency potentially for Washington and the way they are snug up against the cap. But first and foremost, at the top of that list, it was Kuznetsov. And his play this season has been good, no more than good. And they expect him to be very good to great. It hasn't developed. I think he's being defended differently. I don't know that he's gone to the traffic areas that he needs to go to and made his nose a little bloody where he has to get some of those goals. And a lot of what Kuznetsov does is breathtaking. His skating and his stick handling, it's amazing. But that's for a game that's played open. When the game gets tight, those situations go away. It's not like an all-star game where you can just dangle to your heart's content. I think Yevgeny knows that. He has to bear down. We saw a flash of that in a recent game against St. Louis where he was dynamite, and I think he has those abilities and will bring them to the forefront as the season moves along. I'm shocked that Andrei Burakovsky has 2 goals. They came in the season opener at Pittsburgh, Nestor, and I thought...
That was 2 months ago, Joe.
I still believe Burakovsky has 25 to 30 goal talent. I watch him every day in practice. He skates like the wind. He may have the second best shot on the team other than Ovechkin in terms of its ferocity. I fully expect him to be a top offensive player for this team, and I think his future is very bright. I cannot tell you why it won't go in for him right now. It just won't. He's getting opportunities. That's the plus. If he were having these games where he was sleepwalking, you didn't even notice him, that's one thing. You do notice him. He does get chances, and he's just plumb snakebit right now. There are a couple of guys like that. Justin Williams can't throw it in the ocean. If he was standing on the pier right now, that's Justin Williams. That's a 17-year pro who knows what he's doing. I firmly believe that those guys, the younger one, Burakovsky, the elder and Williams, I firmly believe they're going to elevate their play.
He is Joe Beninati, the longtime voice of the Washington Capitals. You can follow him out on Twitter at JoeBPXP. That's play-by-play for those of you who don't know the lingo and the jargon. For the rest of the team, and we talked so much about the heavy game last year and how incredible they were through the first 40, 50 games of the regular season last year. It doesn't feel nearly as heavy to me this year, and that feels like it's by design. And I'm going to talk to Barry Trotz this week, but some thoughts about hitting and what that represents, because when you do make those hits in open ice that have no cause or no reason in the middle of the game, sometimes it costs you TJ Oshie for a month, and I don't know that the Capitals want to play that kind of game right now. Maybe something that they would be better served to play, in April or May, right?
Really interesting topic that you bring up, and every sport, I think you hear people will use this expression, it's a copycat league. Whatever is successful, you try to copy that and reproduce it for yourself. Well, the copycat portion in the NHL right now is Pittsburgh wins with incredible team speed. Pittsburgh, in part, runs to a Stanley Cup championship by beating your Washington Capitals, and doing so, a lot of people believe, because they were a step quicker. So, most of the contending teams, East and West in the NHL, make a very concerted effort to get faster. The New York Rangers, who sit atop the Metro Division, got faster. And
you can see it when you watch them play, by the way.
Oh, my gosh, they fly. And
yeah.
I don't know that they're going to continue to keep putting up 4 and 5 goals a game the way they have in the first quarter of the season, but their offense has been amazing, and it's stunning. They did get faster in 3 or 4 places. The Capitals would love to play a quicker game as opposed to the heavy game we saw a season ago. And Barry, when he comes and speaks to you, Nestor, is going to use an expression, and he's used it for a long time. You have to play north. Go forward. North, south, not as much east-west. The Caps can get pretty fancy east-west. They have to play more of a northern-type game in Barry's estimation, and that will ultimately mean getting the puck to the corners, working their cycle game. I'm not saying that they've gone away from that, They haven't. If you watch the Caps, there are at least two lines that want to cycle every time they're on the ice. That's not the same for the top two lines. They get a little prettier, and they should because there are more offensively gifted players there. But there comes a time when you have to get your nose dirty and play heavy at the same time. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm trying to hit Nestor and run him 4 rows into the seats every time. That's not what I'm necessarily referring to.
Just get him off the puck, right?
Get him off the puck and play from the hash marks of the offensive circles down, below the goal line. We don't do that nearly as much. The Caps don't do that nearly as much as I've seen them in recent years because there's been a concerted effort to make more things happen off the rush, and I'm fine with that. As a play-by-play guy, that's more exciting to me, but what's more effective? What's ultimately going to land you wins in the regular season? What's ultimately going to get you wins when it matters in the playoffs?
Holtby called the effort on Saturday night embarrassing in Toronto, and I think for a lot of the Canadian kids, hockey night in Canada, even Locker, and you guys were having fun with going back home and going to the hometown and doing that. Toronto is the center of the hockey universe. No better place to watch a game than in that gym, and certainly for a number of years, they've just stunk. There's real energy going on with that Maple Leafs organization right now. They smell some winning. They smell a 6, a 7, or an 8 seed, or way to get into the playoffs. They have these young players, but I think it was incredibly disappointing for the home guys, for the Canadian kids, to go up there and not play well on Saturday and throw in the word like embarrassing around. There hasn't been much embarrassing about the Caps since Barry Trotz showed up.
No. And I alluded to one earlier instance. That was the game in Raleigh against the Hurricanes the night before the Caps played an incredibly exciting game with Chicago. They win that game in overtime, if I'm not mistaken, and then fly to Raleigh, get in at 3 in the morning. Literally, head doesn't get to pillow until 4 a.m., and they were god-awful against the Hurricanes. They left Philip Grubauer out to dry, and Barry Trotz blasted them for it. That, to me, was embarrassing. The performance against Toronto was not good. And again, it comes in a 3 games, 4 nights. It comes back-to-back on the second half. And folks will sit there and go, well, what about the schedule? I can just sit there and say more than anything to you, Nestor, some of it is schedule, some of it is give a darn gauge. The Caps blew out the Pittsburgh Penguins on the second game of a back-to-back. They played the night before, while Pittsburgh was waiting in Washington for them. Everything was set up for Pittsburgh to roll the Caps. Instead, the Caps played perhaps their best game of the season and blew the doors off of the defending champs, playing in the second game of a back-to-back. So is it tired? Is it fresh? Is it give a darn? I don't know what it was, but Toronto is a team that plays very well at home, and you pointed to it, you alluded to it. That organization has a lot of resources, i.e. cash. They brought in Lou Lamoriello to run the hockey side. They paid a king's ransom to have Mike Babcock as their head coach. Those two are unquestioned, outstanding people in their professions. They will eventually turn that around. They're drafting very high the last few years, and now all of a sudden, you have a couple of teenagers who are breathing life into that community again. You can talk hockey there, sunrise, sunset. You could do it 24/7 there. And they're talking now about the young kids. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander. The Caps played that game, and they didn't see the NHL's Rookie of the Month for October. Yeah. Toronto, he was hurt. Toronto's very good. They're going to get better. Their defense isn't what it needs to be. They can improve there, but they made Washington look slow on over the weekend, and that's just the way it is. There are going to be some of those games that happen. I'm sure the Caps will file that away. They see Toronto in early January, I want to say, and I'm sure they'll make amends.
One thing we can certainly say is at the top of the roster, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Johansson. We've complained about Kuznetsov and Burakovsky. Oshie's not in there. We could talk about the defense and pairings and whatnot. But the big three, Backstrom, Ovechkin, and Johansson, they've all been really, really good this year. And that's why the team sits in the position they're in, which would be in the playoffs. It feels very safe right now. They have a great goaltender. There's a lot to recommend this team. But I do think we push around the edges when they're not 20-1 as to why they're not. Ovechkin on any given night can score 4 goals.
No question, still, with that shot. It's such a incredible weapon. For example, with correlation to the NBA, it's like when Steph Curry's hot shooting threes. That's what Ovechkin's hockey shot is like. When he's on, you don't stop it. It's just that good of a weapon. And sure, Alex now, in 12 seasons, Nestor, at age 31, does he separate from defenders? Does he pull away from defenders the way he used to? No. But he is still, when he gets to top speed, a threat. And the shot is always there, which always makes the power play potentially explosive. It hasn't been nearly as good as the Caps have enjoyed in the last 5 seasons, but I see elements where it can spark at any time. I am not saying that the Caps are just going to try and flip a switch in March and play through the roof. I'm not saying that they're doing that. I'm just saying that I think they're conserving a little bit. And I think we're seeing some of that from Barry Trotz in that he has consistently tried to make sure that he's getting 4 lines of activity. You see it from the top line's ice time. Alex Ovechkin usually is around 18, 19, 20. A lot of the times this season he's been getting 15, 16, 17 minutes.
And that's totally by design, right? I mean, Trotz told you in August he was going to do that, right?
I think it's by design, and yes, the Caps haven't been drawing nearly as many power plays. When they get power plays, that's when Ovechkin's minutes go really sky high because he normally plays at least 90 seconds of every power play. So you can try and find ways to fool with the numbers, but when I see Ovechkin at the end of the night, 15 minutes, I'm like, wow, Barry is getting his wish in that he's getting to go rolling through 4 lines. He doesn't have to, quote-unquote, double shift as much, and that should serve Ovechkin and Backstrom and Johansson and the like better for later. Marcus has been really good, shooting the puck well. I think being encouraged to shoot it more. He's such a beautiful skater to watch. He's getting rewarded for it. The Caps just rewarded him with a new 3-year deal, and he's producing. Backstrom, I'm always going to say great things about Nicholas at every end of the rink and in the middle. I think he's a wonderful all-around player, and it's not surprising for me to see him lead the team in points. It's not surprising for me to see him making outstanding defensive reads late in the game. Nicholas is just an incredible hockey player, and I think he's the guy who bubbles beneath the surface, whereas there are a bunch of rock stars on this team who get all the spotlight. Nicholas probably is the most deserving of the spotlight, but who doesn't want it?
He is Joe Beninati. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at JoeBPXP. He is the play-by-play voice many years now with the Washington Capitals. And you and Locker are having far too much fun on these broadcasts. I mean, I tell, I'm out at the Ravens camp all the time with Cliff Brown and Brent Harris, and I tell them I'm watching more Comcast Sportsnet because you guys are on 3-4 nights a week. It seems like you're having a lot of fun this far into it, whether it's road trips and the relationship. But more than that, it is a pleasure to sit around and watch you guys call hockey, and I don't always say that. I don't say that about the Oriole broadcast, trust me. So I certainly don't say that about the Ravens radio broadcast, trust me. But when I sit down with you guys to watch a hockey game on a Tuesday or this Thursday as I will, it's very, very comfortable, and I think you guys make it that way because there's a real love of hockey going on there, and more than that, I think with Locker, especially his daughter, there's a real way of trying to teach people and suck people in because hockey is still one of those sports that people will come to it for the first time sometimes, right?
No, you're right, and I appreciate those comments, Nestor. That's the impression, that's the feedback ultimately we want to get from all sports fans who spend a couple of hours of their time with us on the air. It should be educational, it should be entertaining, it should be fun. And learning the recipe for how much of that goes into, what a dash of this, a pinch of that. Locker and I have had 20-plus seasons together to learn that relationship, to learn that recipe, and we've been lucky at CSN in that, our producers have stayed consistent. Directors have been consistent. So there's a family unit off the ice. We happen to get along with each other very, very well. I think people see that.
Well, except when you're flying in seaplanes over Vancouver. That things go to hell in a handbasket at that.
No, there's so many good things that we get a chance to do, and we all look forward to 7 o'clock at night when that red light comes on and delivering the best broadcast that we can. And there are different elements to it. We don't ever want to get the sense of humor, the comedy part, to overtake the game. The game is the most important. Respect of the athletes, respect of the sport, and I think Locker has enormous respect for teaching the sport, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. I wish we had more of an opportunity to be a little bit more educational, but the broadcast is so packed with a lot of different things, both from an entertainment standpoint, from a sponsorship standpoint. I love it when Locker gets the chance to break things down. And it's so cool now to see Courtney Laughlin get involved from a studio standpoint. I know she's learning fast. She's on the job, learning on the job, training very, very quickly, and she's always in constant communication with her father to try and make sure that she's saying the right things. And in concert with Alan May, who is a tremendous teacher in his own right, brings so much passion. I think we've got all the bases covered, pregame, postgame. I really do. And then in-game, when the team plays well, obviously we can sink our teeth into that. And when they don't play well, we can also find a way. Nestor Locker and I have a lot of experience. If you go back 10 years, pre-Ovechkin, or 10, 12 years.
There were long nights at the rink.
We've called a lot of losses. So we hopefully know how to keep people entertained even in the bad times, and that's when you see us start talking about things off tangent. When they're playing in Toronto as they did recently and just not performing, that's when we've got to hopefully try and keep you interested, and we'll do so in a variety of different ways. But more than anything, the game is first and foremost.
What the hell happened to Trotz's head the other night? I mean, we all looked up and he was bleeding, and we're like, what happened? And I went back on my Twitter feed and I saw that he got pinged in the head the first 15 seconds of the game.
Yeah, we rolled it back, too. It's funny. I'm there at the morning skate that day, and I'm racking my brain going, he wasn't cut in the morning. He didn't have that. It looked like an egg on his forehead. I'm like, that wasn't there. And then I thought I had watched the warm-ups, which we usually do, prior to coming on the air. I didn't see anything involved there. And then 6 seconds into the game, the puck's deflected into the bench, and from where we're sitting, nobody reacted. We didn't have it tight. We didn't have a close look at the bench as the puck was flying there. And again, hockey pucks go into team benches quite often, and knock on wood, a lot of the time guys don't get hit. They all have good laughs about it. I didn't see anything happen there. And then all of a sudden we show a cutaway, an introductory, hey, these are your coaches, Mike Babcock and Barry Trotz. And poor Barry's got the egg and the blood starting, and I'm like, Locker, what did I miss?
Yeah, somebody hit him with a stick on the bench or something, right?
During a commercial break, our tape operators found a halfway decent look at it. We didn't have it close enough in a tight TV term, tight example, but we had a slash angle from an upper deck camera, and we were able to see it, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's not a mystery anymore. It was deflected right off of Barry's noggin.
Yeah, and it's shocking that doesn't happen more often, right? I mean, The puck is violent. I mean, we see in baseball, balls go into the dugout and whatnot, but in hockey it feels like it would happen more often, that there would be these sort of friendly fire, right, in the bench.
Yeah, that's a point. And you cross your fingers, you knock wood, and for both the players on the ice, for the officials on the ice, for the fans in the stands. I mean, you please, when the puck's in play, please keep alert.
Beware of the flying puck, they say, right?
You don't want to get hit by that. When you don't want to get hit by it at all, but you don't want to get hit by it unexpectedly. It will sting. And poor Barry was in the wrong place there. I swear, I'm sitting there going, did I miss something this morning? Did he get hit with a stick? And then all of a sudden, the mystery was gone when we showed the replay, and it was thankfully Barry laughed it off and stayed out there the whole game. He was fine.
Hey, man, you got a couple of days off. Take your downtime. I know they'll be skating before Thursday night. Caps get back after it on Thursday night against the Isle, and then head out on the road on Saturday night as well. Last thing for you, did a little Big Ten football earlier in the year. Boy, what a year it's been for the Big Ten, and certainly that Michigan-Ohio State game over the weekend. For Maryland, the highs of beating Purdue by 50 points and the low of getting their ass kicked by 60 points twice in back-to-back weeks. It really is an up and down and a have not kind of conference at this point, right?
Very interesting, and I was lucky. I've been working with Big Ten Network on probably 3 different sports. They occasionally get me for hockey, but they get me a lot for football and for lacrosse. And the Maryland-Purdue game you referred to, I was lucky enough to call, and that was a track meet. Incredible to watch the Terrapins and their stable of running backs at that time run all over Purdue. I get a great feel for what's happening in College Park. I know once we got into the October-November portion of the schedule, it didn't go anywhere near the way the Terps wanted. But I think that they are putting things together in place very, very well there. I have a firm belief in what DJ Durkin can do as a head coach and as a recruiter. I mean, his ability to go in and talk to families and get them to lend their sons to his football programs, I think is going to be well received for the next few years. I love doing football. It's an enormous amount of work. My first game this fall was the return of the Cornhuskers to Lincoln minus Sam Foltz, the punter who tragically passed away in an automobile accident. That experience, that broadcast booth, the energy in Lincoln is phenomenal. And I saw 4 or 5 different spots during the run there, and I wish I could do more. But once hockey starts, I'm sort of married to it.
Well, hey, we'll be married to the Comcast Sportsnet broadcast beginning on Thursday night when the Caps ramp it back up again. He is Joe Beninati. Always great to visit with you, Joe B. Give Locker my best, and we'll see you down there on some frozen pond at some point real soon.
My pleasure, Nestor. Thanks for the invitation.
You got it. Joe B. PXP is the way to follow Joe Beninati, the official Twitter account of Comcast Sportsnet's hockey announcer, along with Craig Laughlin. They do such a great job. I'm rocking my red, getting my Caps together. I'm rocking my Be a Lifesaver DKMS shirt. We're going to be on Wednesday night at Christopher Daniel in Timonium with Zach Orr, who leads the Ravens in tackles, as well as Anthony Levine from the special teams unit, and a defensive player as well. If you don't know him, you'll know him by Wednesday. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a fun guy to have out. I have never had him on the radio show, so he said to me, "Why haven't you had me out?" So I said, "You're too introverted." So we're going to get him on Wednesday night. We'll be swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry, and for There Goes My Hero. That's in Timonium Wednesday. On Thursday, we move it north up to Hampstead in Carroll County. Dennis Pitta will be with us at Greenmount Station. We're doing some radio and swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry out in Hampstead. Always love the Christmas lights out there this time of year, so I'm looking forward to my drive up north to Greenmount Station on Thursday, to Timonium and Christopher Daniel on Wednesday. All the details up at WNST.net. Anything you miss, you can find in the Baya Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. From anywhere in the world, download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox, brought to you by Planet Fitness every morning at 7 a.m. You sign up once, you get it every morning. Last but not least, breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. If there's any moves with the Caps, the Ravens, the Terps, the Orioles, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Kolatzos will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5 with the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. I am a very available individual. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.